Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, even the Birds' best trade chip deadlines are now scuffling and, in Zach Eflin's case, hurt. Hello, everybody. I'm Jon Leiberman. This is Orioles Digest. I keep wanting to come to you with good news, but the news is not so good. The Birds remain 7 games out in the wild card. Zach Eflin appears hurt and appears poised to go to the IL. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why that hurts so much right now, not just for the current state of the team, but for the future state of the team as well. We're also going to talk about the Birds' other potential deadline trade chips, why they're all scuffling as well too, which could prove absolutely horrible for the Birds if they decide that they are sellers. Then I'm going to break down the numbers of exactly what it would take for the Orioles to get into that final wild card position. They have to leap over 7 teams. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. Do miracles happen? Yes. Do they happen often? No. That's why they're called miracles. And I also want to get to Mike Elias' latest comments about whether the Birds will be buyers or sellers at the deadline. If you read between the lines, his words are very, very telling. This is Orioles Digest. I'm Jon Leiberman. Please like, subscribe, do all the things. We still have a long season ahead. We're almost to the beginning of July, which means the All-Star break is coming very quickly, and shortly after that, the trade deadline and the reality is starting to set in. So Zach Eflin leaving the game yesterday with lower back tightness. Knowing this game pretty well, it is a pretty solid bet that today, Sunday, the Birds will announce that Zach Eflin will either undergo more testing or is headed to the IL. That's what I expect, at least. He pitched poorly. He said he was tight in pregame tossing. He still tried to make a go of it, but Zach Eflin with lower back tightness, I fully expect he will go on the IL. So what does that mean? Well, it means a few things. First of all, you look at Zach's numbers, and unfortunately, since his last injury, he just hasn't been good. And that's just the bottom line. He was great in the beginning of the season, and his last several starts, he just hasn't been great. And so overall, 12 games, 62 innings pitched. He's given up the 16 homers and an ERA just a shade under 6. And the problem here is, so now you have a guy who was probably going to be, one of the most valuable pitchers available at the trade deadline should the Birds decide to go that route. But now he's pitching poorly. He's probably headed to the IL. And more importantly, if he goes to the IL, he might not even come off the IL before the deadline. Or if he does, he's not going to have many chances, maybe 1 or 2 starts at the most, to show that he's in better form. So not only is this bad for the current team, it's bad for the future team and what you could get in a return for Zach Eflin. And the news, frankly, doesn't get too much better when you look at some of the other free agents at the end of this season who we've heard in talks about at the deadline who the Birds could potentially sell. Cedric Mullins has a negative wins above replacement now. He's been scuffling for the better part of 4 to 6 weeks now, though he started off hot. Ryan O'Hearn is slumping over the last month, though he is poised to be an all-star and, of course, an Orioles favorite. And then Tomoyuki Sagano, for some reason, when the weather got hot, his pitching performance got cold. So just at the beginning of this series, 7 earned over 5. You look over his past 4 starts or so, and he has given up, if my math is right, 16 runs over his last 4 starts, which doesn't sound terrible until you add up the innings pitched, and it's about that many runs in roughly that many innings. So, I mean, he went 5 and gave up 7. Against the Yankees, it was 3 2/3. He gave up 3. Against the Angels, 4 2/3. He gave up 3. And against the A's, 4 1/3. Gave up 3. And he's giving up a ton of hits. And look, unfortunately, this is just the way baseball is. Sagano's ERA is still only 4.06, but the trend lines are not good. So, what happens from here? Will the Orioles be buyers or sellers? And the best indication of that is this lengthy quote from Mike Elias this weekend. He's saying, I'm hoping we're not sellers, but we have to be realistic. You got to look at the standings, look at the time left before the deadline, how much time is necessary to execute a deadline deal, because it doesn't just take a couple days. He said the conversations are starting to happen now. He's talking to other GMs, and people are preparing. And apparently the other teams aren't, they understand the Birds aren't committed to one way or another yet, but they're doing preparations in both directions and have an understanding of where that might go. So we want to keep playing, keep giving the team that we think is very talented, but unfortunately start off with a bad record as much chance as we can. And this is a huge line, but we're going to have to ultimately make a decision at some point here in July. And, I can tell you that decision, in large part, they're looking at these numbers, right? This is the calculus for, can the Birds make the postseason? Again, this is kind of, in my mind, this is kind of best case scenario, meaning that this is comparing the Mariners, who are the last wild card team right now. They have 80 games left, assuming, because they're projected to win 83. So assuming that 83 is the number, the Birds basically have to go 600 from here on out, and they've only played 420 baseball, 430 baseball to this point. So it would have to be a marked improvement. It's not impossible, but it's also not probable. And here's why. The Orioles, if you think about it, have to outperform a bunch of teams: Angels, Rangers, Guardians, Red Sox, Twins, Royals, and Seattle. And then, if you talk about, tiebreakers, blah, 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 you get into all that. I mean, again, 600 is a lot different than playing, 427 baseball. So again, anything can happen, but these are all the calculations that are being looked at. And frankly, whether the Orioles keep the group together or decide to try and trade the likes of Zach Eflin and Cedi, potentially Ryan O'Hearn, potentially Sagano, those 4 guys are still scuffling right now, so their stock isn't going up. It's actually going down. This is Orioles Digest. I'm Jon Leiberman.